think you should be proving that to yourself and your community. And I think that's where America realizes black youth. When you remove black youth from American culture, I'd like for you to think not just today, but even going forward. What is America without black youth culture or black culture in general? What is it?
I'm interested just to kind of build on that. You know, just Black youth culture, culture period, culture of the youth. Had you guys had a chance to go out and protest? Anybody want to? Chase, I know you had Chase and then Juju.
Uh, when I went to protest, it was really nice just to see how. Like I went to the one of the first ones in Barclays Center, and it was really nice to see how many people. Like I didn't expect to see that many people there, but it's so nice to see how many people. Like not even just black people, but the white kids and just how many people were actually there to step up and do something for what's right. And I just, yeah.
I think the protest was mainly like overwhelmingly children. There was a lot of kids that were like around my age and like 20 and up, and the energy there was very uplifting. Like there were groups of kids that were playing Pop Smoke, playing just a bunch of music that's popular now. Just like mainly having a good time with each other, but also fighting. I feel like black joy is a form of protest in itself, and especially when you're around other people that are like you, it's important, especially in the protest.
Can I ask y'all a question? Um, do I need this? I don't
Yeah,
need
yeah.
it. I'm gonna first ask you a question, both of you and Juju. Do you think the participation of everybody in different races and cultures is helpful? Doesn't matter, or it could be helpful or not helpful at all? And the reason why I ask you that is here's the older guy's
Oh,
perception.
wait. No context yet. I want to hear how they respond, and then I want you to offer.
The question I'm asking, like,
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
does seeing other cultures who aren't
The
socially,
same.
politically alienated, aren't their kids aren't shot in the back like Tamir Rice or Clifford Glover or history. They're not put in the death chair like George Stinney, but they are realizing they may be coming to some awakening. Do you think that's helpful for us to control our narrative? Not helpful? Doesn't matter. Like how much do you give to that?
I know that when I went to those protests and I saw how many white people were there, I was like, it made me happy because I was like, because I don't know if that would have happened, in like the '60s or something, but to see that there were so many people that didn't look like me that I care. I don't know if they cared, but they were there, and that's what's important to me. Like that many people that like cared about like my life or cared about things that didn't involve them. I thought it was kind of rare to see because you know all the white people that I know are kind of really self-centered and stuff like that, and they don't really care about stuff that doesn't really involve them. So have other people in the movement, but it's also important that we control the narrative as well.
Did,
Chase?
before Chase responds, does anybody else protest? Go out and protest. I want to toss it to Nas, and then Chase, I want to toss it back to you.
I was gonna answer your question. Piggyback what Juju said. I feel like it's important for what you said. It's important to have other ethnic groups and people that aren't of our color, like white allies. Juju said he's seen people that were, white protesting. You hear it? Okay. He's seen white people protesting, which is needed because we talk about this word change. The world can't change unless everybody as a collective, does this one job. So that's how I feel about this whole thing.
Chase.
I think it's helpful, but I do think that when they protest and when they're there with us, it needs to be in a positive way, and a way that so they can make sure that the black voices are being heard and not that it's just like it's more about them, and that it really needs to be about the black people and what they're going through, so it can really become or stuff that can be done about it, and not just so it seems like a social a bunch of white people. And for at least the way it seems to me is that they do it not because they care, but because like they just seems cool at the moment. So I just like I want them like if they're gonna help, it needs to be in a positive way and show that they really care about what's going on.
Yeah.
But so I want to hear from. There's a couple of you guys haven't had a chance to kind of weigh in on the conversation. So if you guys want to go back to
Can I say something regarding that?
Yeah.
And this isn't again. Um, this is just based on my experience. I remember growing up, and I did look at these pictures of the '60s, and I was like, wow, it was a lot of white people. And listen, if you study history, white people have lost their lives standing up for civil rights issues as well. The majority have not had to take any part in this. Um, I don't think it's anything rare for white people to join um, our movements. It's not rare. You can study history with that. My only concern, as being someone here who's just a little bit older than you guys, not much, but when you think about time, is that America has always been very good at usurping our narrative. We made rock music, we made jazz, hip hop, fashion, all these things in American culture, and somewhere along the way they get lost because the progress or the success of that business isn't really um, at its height unless it has white approval. And for me, I just would hope you guys understand that your vision, your filter, is what this should be, is separate and apart from that. And if anyone is joining, that's good. But people who join, that's like you invite somebody in your house and your mom's favorite table, and they put their feet on their mom's table. They like you, they're your friend, but their feet still on your mother's table. And how would your mom feel about that if your mother walked in? And I just, that's the only thing that concerns me, is that America that's saying, hey, hey, look, oh, the NFL, look, yo, we tried to suppress black consciousness, but now, yo, this is great, red, black, and green. I just want you guys to always be aware that you should protect and preserve your narrative like your life depended on it.
And that's interesting because we've seen throughout time where movements that have been initiated by people of color have been hijacked by those people who aren't of color. Um, and that kind of brings me to a point because all you guys went to very, very good high schools, right? Pretty elite high schools, private schools. So I would like to kind of explore like that world inside of those private schools, the world outside of private schools. If that experience was synonymous, were some of your experiences during the protests or some of your feelings, thoughts, and ideas that have been evolving since quarantine, since these publicizing of these murders, the ideas have changed, been confirmed. Let's talk about that experience. Your education experience, real versus real world, and in lieu of
Juju,
this
you
moment.
said something. You said your experience has been a lot of your experiences. White people have been self-centered.
Uh, I went to prep school in Massachusetts. Uh, my first month there was probably the weirdest ever. It was just a whole bunch of like people that didn't relate to me. So, them, how do I, communicate with them? But one thing that always resonates with me, like no matter where I go, is I remember me and my father talked before I he actually left me in at school. He was like don't change who you are for these people. Like it doesn't matter who they are. They if they like you, they like you. If they don't, they don't. So my experience at prep school was in even there, like you could the subtle things that they do that like until you get out of it, you realize like wow, like that was kind of shady, that was kind of racist. So that's my experience with it. It's more subtle things. It's not really outward. Like the outward issues, they'll come out once in a while, but it's more of the subtle things, like how they appreciate our culture, but they don't really appreciate us.
You guys are and now all of you guys are at university. Are
Anybody
the
else have any
Yeah,
similar
anybody else want
experience?
to add? Yeah, go ahead.
So I go to uncommon schools, right? I'm not in universities like the rest of you. I'm still going through my high school years. But so throughout my years of uncommon, right, there was you have your Caucasian teachers and your black teachers, but most of the classrooms and classes, right, were full of like black students. It was primarily black school, but there's like some of the teachers, right, that were white, not the black teachers, because like we resonated with the teachers because we felt like they really wanted to teach us something and like have us learn, like grow as people. Because I remember one time like we came together as a school. One of our teachers was like, "Our school has no culture. Like we follow like the standards of our other schools that have been like pushed by the white teachers and stuff like that." Like there's certain teachers that we feel like they were there just because they wanted to make a paycheck and they wasn't like really trying to teach us and stuff like that. But
Did you feel like the curriculum on the day to day was centered around your importance in the world?
um,
Like you feel any kind of confirmation in your education?
in my educational experience, like you know, there it's mostly focused on like making sure we get to like colleges that they find is good. But like me personally, I don't feel like I found like that confirmation of like as a self. Like they didn't really make me feel like that. Like my teachers, like they. Sorry, you could come back to me.
Yeah,
Sorry.
come back.
So I mean, I am gonna come back to you. Help you guys shape your ideas about the world that you guys want to go into.
I think that being a person of color in a predominantly white institution is sort of akin to just being in the world in general, which is that the history that is taught in those schools is not ours. The people who are prioritized in those schools are not us. Um, and honestly, I'm sure that most of the teachers couldn't care less about where the black kids at these schools end up. Um, but in a way, however terrible it is for a kid in a predominantly white school or any institution, it in a way is also sadly a good preparation for what's to come, even in college, because college is more the same essentially um, at most places.
If you have a good community or around you,
Oh
it's
yeah,
important. Like, what if you the kid who single parent from a tough area, and the white schools look at you as like you're like a pretty object, and they're gonna bring you in.
yeah. I mean, we had those kids at our schools as well. Um, were treated terribly, and me and Juju had a friend at Berkeley named Gaddafi, who was from a rough area. He he wasn't particularly great at code switching, which is what you kind of have to do in these places, because he never had to do that before. But he was a good basketball player and he was a good diversity person for the school. Um, but eventually, he got kicked out.
Something minor.
Something minor, but it was also a black parent who initiated him getting kicked out. So
That's interesting.
that's
Can you guys speak to, as Kenny described, the community to help you kind of balance out your experience?
I went to Benjamin Banneker Academy, and it's a predominantly black school. And I feel like we had a mixture of kids there. Like we had kids who were really smart, and some of them came from a really bad community, or some of them like actually came from a good community, good parenting, and just seeing us all collide, it was like we all brushed off of one another. Like me, I come from good parenting, and I had exposure to both type of worlds, but I chose like a better path, and I try to tell my peers who might have chose like a wrong path, and I'm like it's only two options in this path, and it's like they understand, but they always hit me with the, oh, this is why I have to do this, or this is why I have to make this bad decision, and I just try to tell them, you know it's more to life than just that decision. That one decision that you make can put you in many consequences. And basically, I feel like it's different hearing it from a peer rather than an actual like teacher or a older person, because it's like, all right, that older person just don't want me to get in trouble. But when it's like a peer, it's like, man, they really care about me and stuff like that. And I felt that's what's needed in our community. If it's like, okay, I go to a predominantly white school and they don't really care about me, I'm just like that pretty object, like he said, is more of a, okay, I'm just going to continue to be that pretty object. If I get in trouble, I get in trouble. Yeah, they may say don't do that, but I'm not going to listen to them. But when it's somebody that you could recognize, somebody who looks like you, somebody who's your same age, and they really care about you, it's like, all right, maybe they're telling me, like, let me not do this, and they'll make a better decision. And that's what I realized, like, it's better for a lot of my friends and stuff like that, when I actually like talk to them, not really like in a abusive or like a hardcore
Demeaning.
way. It's just like, yo, bro, like what's really good with you? Like, why are you making these decisions? Why do you want to go this route? And they really sit there and tell you why. And then sometimes like you understand why, because some of them, that's all they know. But when you actually explore them to a world and expose them to what's really out there, they try to make better decisions.
What does that mean to be smart, have good parents, come from a good community, but you're black? Or let's not say but. Let's take the but out of there. Smart, good family, good community, you're black. You guys have these t-shirts on. Smart, good community. Smart, young, right? What does that mean?
Better question. Does that put you in any better position than anybody than Gaddafi? Does that put you in any better position in the systems of what this society is built on?
With even out though without those first three things, but the one thing that you guys shared in common was that you're black. Does that change anything for you guys? And can I?
I was gonna say like that's basically like a target on your back because that's rare. You don't see that in the black community majority of the times. You always see like a kid raised from the projects or something. So like it's basically a big bullseye that you have on your back.
Anybody want to expand on that?
Actually, like just last week, voting, I was on the corner and I was advertising for this man, for people to vote for him across the street from a voting site. And I had his opposing person next to me also getting other people to try to vote for the other person. And that lady, she was a white lady, she called the cops on me and my friends. And like she didn't even tell us anything. She just literally went inside the voting site, got the cops, and the cops came, approached us, and was like, "Yo, y'all can't like be over here." And we're like, "What?" Like black kids, like we're like we didn't do anything wrong. We just telling people vote, like passing out literature, and the cops just approached us. And it just goes to show. And she was running for a black and Spanish community, and it just goes to show like these are the type of people we're trying to elect. And the lady didn't know me. She don't know where I come from. She don't know any of my friends, and she just approached us like that. And it's like no matter who you are, just by the color of your skin, you're just that target.
I want to just bring two points.
And I want to toss it to Juju
You
after.
said something a while back, though, like maybe 20 minutes ago, that really stuck with me. You said that the experiences you had were subtle; they weren't really overt. And that to me is a metaphor of how white supremacy really works, because you guys have all, the number of people who have been killed in this country, black men and women. There's a book I want you guys to get called Without Sanctuary. It's a photo illustration book. It's hard to come by now, so make your parents buy it. It's like $300. Um, and the and society will have you think that is bad. We all know that's bad, but that's just the grotesque form of white supremacy. The reason why all these people on your shirt can get killed and people have arguments about whether it's justified is because it's the little things that are happening in society, in school, with you guys, with teachers, Wall Street, finance, real estate, healthcare. It's all these little things that are in play. So when the big thing happens, it's like, well, what did he do? What did she do? And that's one thing. And it's something you said about, I think the cool factor, and this is just from my personal experience from growing up in Brownsville and Crown Heights. I've seen them block out a kid at a really early age. And what I mean, I'm talking about I had friends between 12 and 14 who had went on the path to be cool, and they nosedive never to return again. I get to college. I make it out of Brooklyn at a very wild time. And I go to a school where for the first time in my life I actually seen black kids. And that was like, growing up, unfortunately, where I grew up, the people who had money were either on TV or hustles. It's unfortunate. And I got to Hampton University and I seen wealthy kids or kids who came from affluent families. And when I say affluent, I don't mean they were daddy Warbucks.
They had
Their
access.
parents had information, they had knowledge, they had connections or whatever. And it was odd to me that the kids who came from squared away homes or I think every family probably has some level of dysfunction, but for the most part, cohesive community. They wanted to be what they thought was the tough kids or cool. So I seen kids come from good homes get into street stuff because they thought that was the thing to get into. And it was a very weird mix of things. And it made me realize that America brands what they think you guys should be and they sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, people buy. And I've always wondered what happens when black youth resist that. Like, what if all the ill rap artists of today on SoundCloud, who's not even on Hot 97, but all you kids know who they are? What if they said, it's corny to be a record company. We're gonna build our own company.
But you know what's interesting about that? You want to pass the mic to Kenny for me, please? It's for the recording. What's interesting about that is, this idea that Kenny's talking about is sold to you guys, right? So it's sold to you guys. I mean, you guys have the choice to buy into the narrative or not, right? Whether or not, based on how you look, you guys are a part of that narrative. Who knows? Time will tell. But Juju, like very recently, where you were stopped by the police, is that true? Or have you ever been? What any of you guys have you been stopped by police?
You too? Me too.
There was one time when, there was one time, the worst, I think, my perception on like the world and stuff. It was I was leaving a restaurant with my parents that was maybe like a 5-minute walk away from my house, but I had to use the bathroom really badly. And instead of using it there, because I didn't want to use it there, I wanted to use it at my house. So I was like sort of like jogging to my house, and when I got to the corner of my block, like the beginning, there was a car there, and it like kind of followed me as I was jogging, and I was like, "What is this?" I was like really sussed out. I was like, So I started speeding up a little bit, and then it started going faster too, and I was like, "Whoa!" So by the time I got closer to the end of my block, I was nearly sprinting, and they pulled up on the curb, like they drove their car onto the sidewalk and hopped out of the car with their guns in their hands, and they were like, "Stop! What are you doing?" And I was like, "What are you doing?" And they were like, "You look like something happened or something." And I guess I fit the description as always, and they were just really aggressive towards me about why I was jogging. I told them I lived right here. My house was literally for me. And then I told them my parents were coming right behind me in a few minutes, and they got back in the cars and they left. And
Why do you say that that was? Why do you say that that was the worst?
because,
How you feel, the experience, like
well,
all of that.
that kind of traumatized me because like ever since that moment, I have like a really like weird thing. I get like really anxious around like cars and stuff when cars are like driving by me and stuff like that. So and then just the fact that they saw a 15-year-old kid pants and like a baggy shirt or something, thinking that I might have been a criminal was just so bizarre to me. Like I had braces. Like I looked corny. I didn't look like the type of person that could commit a crime or something like that. And but they just saw the color of my skin, and that was it for them. They came out, guns loaded, probably ready to shoot me if I reached for something like my ID or something like that. And that's when I was like this is real. Like it doesn't.
With the knot or so, has anybody else had similar experiences to that?
My experience is similar to Juju. So I want to say about 3 weeks ago, I was running to a friend's house, but I was also working out. And then, it was a detective car right there, and I was like sprinting because I was working out, or whatever. And he stopped me. He was just like, what are you running from? What do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, do I have to look like I'm in some sort of danger? I was just like, I'm exercising, and he was just like, oh, you look like you're in some sort of trouble. So I feel like, you know, that like really hit me. I'm like, when cops see us and they see the color of our skin, they see danger. That's my take on it.
So just to let you guys know,
Yeah.
once again, this is a live. Uh, this is live on IG. There will be an edited version that's going to appear on YouTube. And also probably at a later date will be on Facebook as well. This conversation is falls in a series. So this is the second. This
Yo,
is the first.
can I say something to those from? I feel I have to only because I grew up in the same at a you know, my first experience with police was I was 15, Juju's age, and older white man we had come to 59th Street, Columbus Circle. He was reading the paper. He didn't realize that it was his stop, so he decided to push everybody out of the way, and he pushed me. I pushed him back, and that was it. And it was maybe 6 undercover detectives on the train, all white, grabbed me up. I kind of had a mouth then, so I was like, "Yo, where's your badge? It's my right." They put their badges inside, and they said, "Yeah, just like it's your right to carry guns and sell drugs." I was 15 at the time. They gave me a summons, and that was my introduction to police contact beyond just the stares and the looking. And fast forward in life, so I got to figure. I was 15 at that time. 10 years later, I become a prosecutor in the district attorney's office. And as a prosecutor, I remember one day I'm in court, standing up on cases as a prosecutor, and we had to approach the bench. And I approached the bench with a good friend of mine, and the judge looks up, looks at me, looks at my partner, and says, "No defendants at the bench." Black and white and his officers. I would come into court sometime and go into the well, would ask for my ID and say no defendants behind the well. Um, Supervisors, when they would assess cases, and this is what's wrong with this system. This is why I'm not so sure defunding would affect any of this. It has its purpose, but you'll get a supervisor. It's a case. All he sees is Jamal Washington or Tyrone Jones, and he makes a bunch of assumptions about what that happened in that case. And I've seen it with my own eyes when they get Tommy McFadden or some other different name that they've associated with non-black, then they're much more doubtful of the police's version of events. And what I'm here to tell you is these police officers, the district attorneys, the judges, the jurors, they all have that filter of race that you've all felt. That's not something that's imagined in your head. Like that's actually real. There's no mistake that 2.5 million people are in strategy involved, and whatever your solutions are, that's just one way to skin a cat. Like your solutions have to be dynamic. They got to be on your own time. You may have people in your family who don't quite understand your lens. You may have friends who don't understand your lens, but find your tribe and keep building and really commit to your preservation of self. You know what I'm saying? Because that's to me what's problematic about all the protest stuff is that we can't possibly fix some years while we're on a stage performing for everybody.
And can I also just to add one more thing, like it's cool. We could go protest, we could riot, we could do whatever. We could scream at white people to change all we want, but I think that the theme that I'm noticing that is most important, or one of the most important tools of actual systemic change is actually being there for each other 100%. We actually sticking together as a race 100%, and then being able to build the same thing that white supremacy was founded on within our own communities, as in us growing up being leaders, creating the same connections and opportunities that white parents have given to their children and friends of their children for generations. Once we get into those positions of power, we have to make sure that we stay in those positions and that we are giving those positions and we're sharing those positions only with people who look like us, so that in the future, once that's been put into action for many generations, we can eventually say that we are above ever needing anything from any other race.
Do we have any tangible examples for what that looks like? Anybody?
I was actually going to add on to what he was saying. I totally agree with you guys, and I feel like it's actually weird that we'll go into Jewish neighborhoods and we'll judge the Jews for what they do and keeping things in their community and say like, "Wow, they're crazy. The Jews are just doing this, this, and this." But we can do that ourselves, and instead of like looking at them, we can look at like how they actually did it. Like, yo, let's do this ourselves, because once we do that, it's like us all together versus one person. That one person is going to lose. So let's say we take everybody in our community and we go add on to another community, all of us together against like the white people. They try to call us, oh sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but they try to call us, minorities, and we are actually the majorities. And if we all come together and stop like disvaluing each other, we can actually make a change. And I feel like that's what it's about, because we look at it as like, if I have an idea, my friend will come with an idea, and then we'll try to argue it. Let's just put our ideas together. And I feel like that's the number one issue within our community. And I feel like in the future, I think I'm not gonna live to see it, but I know that maybe like our kids will live to see the change, because every generation has their own type of change. And I think like further down the line, we may get that change that we need, but I don't think it's going to happen in America
What
itself.
have you had an
And you
opportunity?
and you're smart, because it's not in it. White supremacy isn't localized to America. America has a certain type of violent brand of it, but it's a global thing. You're absolutely right. But there's one thing I also want you guys to understand. There's been many examples of black communities coming together. And you always hear, well, Wall Street, Little Haiti, it's a bunch of examples of that. Unfortunately, we're programmed to, think about it. We're programmed to think that black is not enough, or isn't satisfying enough. You're gonna learn, if you haven't already. Some of you are interested in law school. It was a famous case 65 plus years ago, Brown v. Board of Education, where everybody thought that was the thing. You go to Upper West Side, them same parents who were like, yo, I don't want any of these kids and my to bring down the school. Those parents are probably out there protesting. Their kids probably out there protesting. But what Brown v. Board of Education also did was, prior to that, we were teaching our own kids and teaching in our community. And then Brown v. Board of Education, which is this symbol of integration, you had 100,000 black teachers, went down to maybe 40,000 black teachers, because what happened was society said, you know what? Yeah, if we got to deal with, we'll just harass your students, but you know what? You're not teaching our kids. So that we lost the ability to educate ourselves. And I think any solution that you come up with, whether it's a traditional education or outside of it, it has to be an educational process.
And
You know,
I was also thinking like,
you know,
whatever we teach each other in our community, it has to come out of our community, if that makes sense. Like, we need to be exposed to other places to get out of that box, because it's like, if somebody comes and tells me like, yo, there's crown fried chicken down the block, it's crown fried chicken down the block, but all I know is the Chinese restaurant, I'm going to stick to what I know until I'm going down the block to actually see that there's another opportunity, there's more food out there. So I think that needs to happen on, on a bigger scale. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to step out of our neighborhood, not just going from another to another neighborhood, going to another country, another state, seeing how other people live, seeing what's going on over there. so that we can actually see like, yo, there's actually more to life than what is just here. And that
Hmm.
experience speaks way more volume than anything, any picture you could show anybody, like actually seeing it yourself.
And that goes back to community. So it's funny. When we were doing the publicizing for this event, for this particular live, I posted the flyer onto my Instagram, and then Danielle Brown, shouts to Danielle Brown, we had on the podcast, was like, "It's my friend's son Chase." It's like, word. I was like, "Who is this Chase kid?" And I'm meeting you today, and that photo was actually on the cover of the post, correct? Can you speak to that moment?
So basically, I was at the protest, and I saw this woman. They said she set fire to like this like banner in front of Barclays, whatever it's called, and there was like 8 cops hopping on top of her, and it was just so unnecessary, the amount of force that they were using. Like, she was behind the police lines, like there was nobody that would have been able to get to her anyway, but there was still like 8 cops just like sitting on top of her. Then I was talking to the cop after, and he was like, yeah, well, I knew it was wrong, but it's not my job to say anything. It's my job just to watch the fence, and I can't trust you what you're saying, because you could be lying, you could want to do something wrong, like, even like, that's just not my job. And I just like, I was so confused, like, how you're supposed to keep the peace and do stuff that's right, but like you can't even speak out against like the people that like you work with, that you know is wrong, and you even admitted to me that it was wrong, but you're still gonna like let it happen. And it just like, that just like switched a flip in my brain, because it was like, don't care about, like, they'll let it slide because like that's their job. And it's just,
Is there a world where we not getting pulled over for jogging? We not getting pulled over for riding our bikes? We not getting pulled over for speaking out and advocating for those who may be less fortunate? Is that a fantasy of a right now time? Is that a possibility for a later time? Um, are we so consumed with all the deplorable happenings that we've seen on the media that we just say, yo, this is what it is? Or, you know, do we have an opportunity to maybe see some light or shine a light at the end of the tunnel? Is that possible?
So as of right now, I feel like in this day and age right now, my generation, I feel like this is a fantasy in a way, but I feel like later on down the line, this could happen, because as of now, because of the people who are in power and like have control, it's about like their opinions and how they see things. So like personally, I feel like people of our black community who have these opinions and for us, I feel like they need to get up into those high spots where they have the power in order to make changes like globally.
Juju, are there any works that you are involved in that maybe kind of are aiding this vision?
Well, I've worked in two organizations. One was Warriors in the Garden, which was a group that organized protests for they just organized protests and stuff like that, and they gave speeches during these protests. And it was led by one kid named Chiose. He's actually running for council. 22.
Father's birthday today.
Yeah, it's his father's birthday today. His father was Combat Jack. And he's running for councilman. And I worked with another organization called City Kids that provided um, they were protesting kids, so they had masks and them, they had water, they had snacks, they had just like other necessities that you might need. They had Purell, stuff like that, and they also gave food to homeless and stuff like that. So when I think of like change in the future, for more of my generation, I think that the white people in my generation need to realize that when we let go, or if we ever do, of like white supremacy or institutionalized racism and stuff like that, I think they're gonna have to like that they're not as great as the world says that they are, and I feel like that's gonna be like a really big mindset shift for them, and I just don't think that that's possible. Because I mean, as like a person like myself, like why would I give up something for me to help you? Like I just don't think that's very possible for them.
And you hit, all of you guys have hit it on the head. And for me, like I said in the beginning, I'm not a hope guy. I don't believe in hopeism. I do have faith in young people like yourselves, though, because your lens of this is very important. Leadership. You guys have to be the source of the leadership. And you just mentioned what Che is, what, 21? 21, right? Here's the problem. If we are all complacent in the system, that the best that we can do is vote for the lesser evil. And we've had no part or played no part in cultivating the leadership. Let's just be logical. Why would that leadership that's in play do anything representative of changing our condition? That just doesn't make any sense. But because you guys are informed, because your experiences are real, you now can look at this thing differently. You have things that are accessible to you that a lot of people didn't have, like the digital branding age. It's put advanced capitalism at a very interesting place. And there's something I'm gonna get all you guys address. I want to buy you guys a book, and now it's kind of dense. You're gonna read it. You're gonna be like, you may like it, you may not. I was
Put it in your
enthralled by
library.
it.
In your library.
But this book, the reason why I think of this book is because it's something you guys said. It's Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth. I'm gonna buy you guys all of that book, and even if you can't get through it, just read the last chapter, and it'll help you navigate the world that you're in, and it'll come in a sense that what you're seeing is real, but it also, I think, provides you some innovation as to what's to come. Because you're right, we don't know what can come, and Juju, you're absolutely right. No one is gonna give up their privilege. It's not happening. That's why this American experiment that we've been going through, that's why today looks like yesterday and the day before, because that is the challenge. And the real challenge is that even the white person who doesn't have any privilege, they're probably poorer than your friends who come from hard times. They realize that their privilege can one day get them somewhere that they normally wouldn't if they look like you. And you're right. But here's the thing. You guys should be preoccupied about creating a world that makes sense to you, not cultivating them to do something different or to just ease their grasp from around our throat or pick their feet up off our neck a little bit. Because I think if that's your position of power, to convince someone who's clearly against you to be cool, you in a wild fight.
I want to borrow something that Juju said very early on in the live. So this is gonna. I want all of you guys to participate. Juju said, "Black joy is a form of resistance." So this might be a little corny, but let's end it on a high note as we start to wrap up. One word: Black joy is.
Repeat that again. I'm sorry.
Black joy. Juju said, "Black joy is a form of resistance."
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right now, I mean, I know I do my daily rituals and routines. If it was one word and way in a way where you showcase Black joy as a form of resistance, well,
I think Black joy is great.
okay.
Yeah, I agree with Aaliyah. I would say I think Black joy is like powerful.
I would say Black Joy is beautiful. Just seeing my people congregate and be as one, as a unit.
I would say Black Joy is innovative and also change.
Black joy is resistance and radical for me.
She said, I think Black joy is power.
I'd say Black joy is independence.
Black joy is freedom. It's the freedom to do what you want, have fun with your friends without, fear of anything else.
I would say that Black joy makes creativity and causes like.
I would say Black joy is the youth for me, preserving it, getting it ready, prepped up for y'all to take it over. And as we fade out, I want to say thank y'all for participating in this. I want to say thank you to the partners, Brooklyn Combine, A Life NYC, Public School NYC, the Stuy Dome, Brooklyn Scholar Act. If we missed your name and all the participants who helped this bring this to fruition. We want to say thank you guys. We'll do another installment of the series with the sisters as we explore and break down this idea of public safety and what the future is going to look like for us. Once again, this will be made available via YouTube, the edited version. We'll put it also on Facebook Live. And for right now, I mean, that's it. So thank you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your summer.